Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Vodcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kent, along with my co host.
Rex?
Friends, regarding our very special guest artist today, he's a veteran of Christian rock, possessing one of the most dynamic voices, belting out the good news of Christ. We knew him in the late 80s as the front man for the band Ruscha, delivering such notable tunes as Come Alive and Come Home. And in the early 90s, he fronted the wonderful hard rock outfit Legend, also known as Legend 7. They gave us such great songs as Friendly Fire, After the Fall, Refuge, and Burning Desire. Teaming up with Randy Thomas of Allies and Sweet Comfort Band, he delivered 1997's Identical Strangers album, plus his 1999 solo album, Midnight of Hope. So, friends, today we welcome the one and only, the legend, Andy Denton. Welcome, Andy. It's an honor to have you,
Thank
sir.
you so much. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Andy, it only makes sense. We always like to start off at square one. And so we'd like to ask you, sir, was there music in your home while growing up, whether blaring from the radio or maybe you had family members who performed music?
Yeah, my dad had this old acoustic guitar, and he had it for a long time. And he when I was born, my dad was in the army, and we lived in Kansas. And my mom was telling me stories about my dad would take this guitar because we didn't have any money, and he would go hawk this guitar. But he loved that guitar so much, he'd go back down and buy it back. And anyway, he had that guitar until the day he died, and he played and sang. I never was a very good guitar player. I've always described myself as someone who played at the guitar. I wasn't very good, but I chose at a young age to play drums. So I was a drummer for a long time. And the funny story is that I really didn't discover my voice till I was in high school, and I was in a band, and I was playing drums, and the singer decided to quit. So one day I walked up to the microphone, I started singing these songs, and the guys around me kind of looked at me kind of funny, like, dude, I think you're a better singer than you are a drummer. So that's kind of how I just kind of stumbled into singing, and then I fell in love with it, and I was like, I realized, you know what, I do have a decent voice, and I'm going to try to hone this craft a little bit. I've never had any kind of lessons, or it's just all self-taught and listening to records and things like that, and everybody has their own favorite. Whatever you do, if you're a singer, you have your favorites, and you try to emulate them and copy some of the things they do, and hopefully you create your own path with it. But so that's kind of the whole thing. My mom loved music. She wasn't a musician, but she loved Elvis Presley. So we had music going some and all that. So
Well, Andy, who were some of your personal musical influences then?
let's see. Growing up, I remember the first concert I ever went to was the Carpenters, but I wouldn't say they were an influence on me. I would say that was just the first thing that I ever experienced in live music or anything like that. But probably my teenage years, I really loved all that stuff, like Journey, Foreigner, Boston, all that stuff. That was in my wheelhouse. I loved all that stuff. But I'm kind of an eclectic type person, in the sense that I like a lot of different music, and I love songs. I mean, if you look at one of my playlists today, you're gonna see something that's, you might hear Etta James on there, and then you might hear a Russ Taff song, and then you might turn around and hear a Journey song, and then you might hear a country song. So I'm kind of eclectic that way. I love music, and I like great songs, and I like good singers too. I like good singers, or singers that are unique. That have a unique thing about their voice. They might not be the greatest singer, but you know who they are.
Andy, you're known for your powerful soaring lead vocals, and along with the vocals, there's typically the responsibility of being a front man.
Yeah.
The front man, of course, bridging the gap between audience and band. You mentioned being in a high school band, and I'd like to ask you maybe what the name of that band was and what style you were. And, did you, was being the front man, was that something that you found moreover than your wonderful vocal abilities? Did you find that to be something, was it easy for you to bridge that gap between audience and band? Or, was it something that you found, hey, this is a little bit more of a role than what I thought, and something that you kind of had to work into?
Yeah, yeah. I think you have to work on it. I think some people are naturals, but sometimes people like me, I had to really work on being a better front man, because when I was in high school, I just stood up there and sang, and then I mean, I've never been a person that I wanted to get up there and fake it and act like I'm something that I'm not. But you got to have a little bit of you got to entertain a little bit. I mean, there's those guys like David Lee Roth, who just was an entertainer.
Sure.
I mean, he was over the top entertainer, but I probably like the people that Lou Gramm didn't move around a lot, but he was entertaining. Steve Perry, he was good with an audience. I think one of the best frontmen I've ever seen is Bono.
Bono,
Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he makes a connection with
Yeah.
the audience. He's got there's some charisma there and stuff. So
Yeah. Just bringing the songs to life,
yeah,
the audience can see the song in you,
right.
After the fall, here come the storms. After the fall, you stand there all alone. After the fall,
Andy, I'd like to ask, going back for just a minute, you mentioned your high school band, excuse me, and what was the name of your band while in high school, and what style of music did you all perform?
Yeah, it was the band was called Medusa.
Okay.
And it was we just did cover stuff. We did all the bands that I'm talking about,
Sure.
and so that it didn't last very long, because that was like probably my senior year of high school, and then I went to junior college for about a year and a half, and really kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do. So it was a big waste of time, and I wasn't a Christian at that time. Shortly after that, I became a Christian, but just came to a point where I was like, I might as well just get a job, and just maybe I can pursue my music by getting a job. So I got a job at the electric company, and I read meters for several years until thinking about things start running together. I'm trying to remember if I was even my wife and I got married while I was a meter reader. So but that's after I became a Christian and stuff, and kind of straightened my life up and started trying to fly right. Anytime you try to fly right, you still hit snags on the road.
Oh, sure. We're always works in progress.
Yeah.
Andy, you talked about, incidentally, my next question, you talked about becoming a Christian. My next question was, along with your great vocals, you also sing about the greatest message, and that is the good news of Christ. So,
Yeah.
Andy, we would like to ask, when did your relationship with Christ begin?
Well, when I was 14, I had hair down to here, down, past my shoulders. Um, and I went to church camp one summer, and you listen to somebody speak and the music and all that stuff, and you feel sort of a tugging at your heart, and you realize, I think that's God. I think that's God knocking. And so I went forward and I gave my life to Christ. And the sad part about this story is when I came back to my seat, they said, we're going to set you up with someone that can do some discipling with you and let you know where you need to go from here and this and that. And a guy took me off to the side, and he didn't really do any kind of discipling. All he did was talk about my hair, that I needed to get a haircut, and that God looks down on men with long. And I got to be honest with you, it was such a turnoff. And I was 14, very, very impressionable. That guy could have discipled me, and who knows what I would have done then. But I ended up going back to my old life, and for whatever till I was 19 or 20, until I got sick of where I was, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give church one more chance. And so I started going with a friend to church, and gave my, I don't know if you'd say got resaved or rededicated my life, but that's what I did, and met my wife at church, and lots of good things happened out of that. And, doors began to open up for doing music and stuff. I started a local Christian band. I'm from Amarillo, Texas, so we played a lot of stuff around there and the surrounding areas and stuff. And so, the Christian walk is not easy, but it's far better than the alternative, I think.
Sure. You bet. What was the name of your first band there in Amarillo, Andy, and what kind of music were you doing?
Well, the first thing that I did was I joined a little church group that was it was a silly name. It was called Agape Fellowship, and I sang and I played some congas and bongos and things like that. And so that lasted for a little while, and then I decided, what, I want to do something different. I want to do more of a rock type deal, because at that time, we were all, Petra was out, and all these great Christian groups. The first Christian group that I ever saw live was the Imperials with Russ Taff. And I was just blown away by I was blown away by Russ Taff, not necessarily the Imperials, but I loved Russ Taff. I thought, this guy is a great singer. Mm-hmm. And, he's had his stuff that he's had to deal with, and people not very nice about the way his life. And you're just like, you know what? We're all human, and things happen to us. And that guy could use somebody to say, hey, man, I'm here for you, instead of saying, you're not who we thought you were. So anyway, I got off the subject. I'm sorry. But so then I started this thing. We got a few guys together, and my wife and her friend were singing background in it and stuff. And it was called Lazarus. So we had pretty good little following, in the Texas area that we came from and stuff.
Listen to the voice, you still have a choice to
you're probably familiar with Billy, the drummer in that was in Ruscha and Legend 7. So Billy ended up he was in one of those bands with me, and he ended up deciding that he just, he wanted to go to Nashville. And so he moved to Nashville, and he saw an advertisement from the band Ruscha that so he took their number, and they were looking for a drummer, and he got on with them. And so he was playing drums for them. I was still in Texas. I was still in Texas. Well, they asked him about, do you know any singers? And so he said, I know a singer. And so he reached out to me first, and then they reached out. So I met with him and stuff. And my wife still had a job. Believe it or not, she cut hair and stuff back then, but I would travel back and forth. Let me go back. I met with them, and my wife and I met with them, and we thought, well, it's worth a shot. So I quit my job my dad thought I was an idiot for quitting my job with the electric company. And I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. If I don't go for this now, I never will. And I'll be kicking myself when I'm 50 going, I should have tried. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I would travel back and forth, and my wife's still back in Texas. And it got to, those guys the Ruscha guys talk about road warriors. I think that first year, I may be exaggerating a little bit, but I think we toured 300 days that first year I was with them. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy. And it got to a point where I was like, listen, and we'd make trips back to Nashville, but I couldn't get back home because we'd have to turn around and go back out and stuff. And I got to the point where we were out, and I just was like, listen, guys, I need to see my wife. And I had a little girl too at the time, a baby. And I said, I need to see my kid. I haven't seen him in forever. I'm going to end up being not married if I don't see them, So they were gracious enough. They flew my wife and my daughter out to I guess we were in California at the time, and they spent like a couple of weeks with us out there. So that kind of helped and everything. And then my wife ended up getting a job with the airlines, and she's still as a flight attendant. And so that enabled us to move. We moved to Phoenix, but I was able to fly back and forth to Nashville. And then we ultimately, after she did all her training and stuff, we moved to Nashville. So that's how that whole thing. I'm not even letting you guys talk, am I?
No,
that's fine. That's fine.
We're all ears, Andy. We're all ears.
This is interesting.
And it was in 1988 I first came. That's when I was introduced to your voice, through the Come Alive album by Ruscha, because I had a compilation, and it's really weird with the mainstream artist. I've always kind of poo-pooed compilations, K-Tel Presents and all.
Right.
But honestly, for people like Rex and myself, fans of the music that you guys were doing, a good compilation for Christian based artists was everything, because there wasn't the exposure for many of the Christian based artists like there were for the mainstream. So if you came across a good compilation album, it could introduce you to some great bands. And so I was introduced to Ruscha on 1988's there was a cassette tape I bought called Testify, and Ruscha was featured on there. Perhaps a strange question here, Andy. Ruscha, and friends out there, if you're not familiar with the band, it was spelled Ruscha. You guys were performing. You released the Come Alive album. This was during what we remembered in the 80s and very early 90s as the Cold War period. From 1947 to 1991. And this was, of course, between the U.S. and USSR. weird question here, Andy. Did you guys, were there some maybe who didn't, with the band name Ruscha, that maybe didn't understand the band, or did you all receive any strange stares or any flack during this time when y'all were doing your thing?
I don't recall, because the spelling was different, and I don't know if anybody even put the two and two together.
Sure.
You know, until they realized, anybody that followed Peter and Nikolai, they knew what it was about. But no, I don't recall. I don't recall having any negative stuff being said or anything or like that about that time period.
So another question, and Andy, on our proverbial table, we always have what we call the pass button. And that's for maybe a little more of a candid question where we never try to dig up dirt. But as fans, we have questions of curiosity. But if we need to hit the pass button, it's certainly there.
Okay.
Your band Legend, you all released your eponymous album on Word Records in 1992. And Legend featured Mike Jacobs on guitar, the late great Billy Williams on drums. And along with you, you all formed that band with bassist Randy Ray. Now, 3/4 of you came from the band Ruscha. And so, without trying to dig up any dirt, did Ruscha simply fizzle out? Or, was there a time where there needed to come a parting of ways or something?
I would say that there were just some things that began to erode, and the three of us felt moved to say, I think it's time to move on and do something else. And I mean, for years, the years that I was there, people thought I was one of their brothers. I don't know if we had, I guess maybe it was the hair, I don't know, that made people think that, I was one of the brothers. But it was not I wouldn't say it was a mutual parting of the ways in a good sense. It was just, you get to a point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something else. Fortunately for us, the guy who produced the Ruscha album, Bubba Smith, was able to get us kind of going. We produced some demos and stuff, and he's the one that got us on Word Records, and they wanted to sign a rock band because I guess they didn't have, on Word itself, they didn't have any, because I think Petra was on were they on Star Song at the time?
Yeah.
I don't remember. So they wanted to sign a rock band, and so they signed us. They signed Guardian on a kind of a sub label that was owned by Word, I think. But anyway, that's just what happened on that.
Before coming up with the name Legend, I think you all were called something else. And wasn't there some kind of like I'm just going on memory here. Wasn't there like a contest or something for fans to name your band?
I'm trying to think. The original name was Archon.
Archon. What did that mean?
I don't know anymore. I forgot what it means.
and that was on that band was on a Heaven's Metal compilation, I believe, Andy, that Archon band name, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was, yeah. Well, and I'm trying to remember if there was a contest or one of the
Didn't
guys.
it have something to do with Heaven's Medal where fans could vote or
Yeah, I think so.
submit a name?
Yeah. And I honestly, I didn't like that name. I went with it because that's what, I guess the contest, and then some of the other guys in the band, they liked it. Okay. I didn't like it because it sounded like, I mean, we're not legends. We're not, it doesn't, I don't know. I just never cared for that name. And then we got into, there was some band up in Rhode Island. They had the trademark on the name Legend, so they realized that we had records, or we had a record out, and so they contacted our management and said, "You can't use that name. The only way you can use that name is if you buy it from us." And so they wanted like $10,000 to buy that name, and we were like, no, we'll just alter it. So that's what, and it doesn't even mean anything. Legend 7, I don't, it doesn't mean anything, but we just thought, oh, it sounds kind of cool.
Sure. I mean, this is a high compliment, Andy, and what I'm about to say, but I mean, we love Legend/Legend 7. And to me, and I'm just going to this is just a statement, but you mentioned earlier some of your influences of being Journey and Foreigner, and Rex and I were discussing, and I was a fan of the early incarnation of this band that I'm about to mention, but also kind of their mid period from the late 80s to the very early 90s. But I can't help love Legend, love your great hard-edged arena rock sound, but always kind of felt you guys were comparable to late 80s and early 90s Bad Company with Brian Howe on the vocals and stuff.
That is so funny you say that.
No Smoke Without a Fire and Holy Water. I mean, you guys were
Here Comes Trouble.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking about, when I was going to bed last night, I was thinking about that we were listening to all that stuff then, and I loved that guy's voice, Brian Howe. And even though I think Mike Jacobs, he kind of fought sometimes about, he loved bands like Night Ranger and things like that. So he loved those, he got to where I've got to write a certain guitar part for this song or whatever. And sometimes I was like, just play it like Eric Clapton, But he's a great guy, great guitar player. But yeah, he liked Bad Company too, but he always wanted to carve out his own pathway guitar wise and things like that. But yeah, that's I probably love that Bad Company stuff with Brian Howe more than I liked Paul Rogers. Yeah. I know that's criminal. You can't say that, but and I like Paul Rogers too. I like the whole Bad Company thing. And I'm not usually a fan of bands that change the singer.
Right.
I usually don't like that, but in certain cases, like that band, I thought he was fantastic. I listened to a bunch of his stuff, and then other bands, it's taken me a long time to get over the fact that Steve Perry is no longer in Journey, and the guy that's there now, he's been there longer than Steve Perry. I think the new guy from Foreigner was good. He's different than Lou Gramm.
Kelly Hansen.
Yeah. But good singer, a great front man, probably better than Lou Gramm. I even like the Van Halen, the
Van Hagar.
Yeah, I thought both versions were really good. But there are certain bands that change singers, and I just kind of go, that's not working for me.
Well,
you guys, go ahead, Rex. I'm sorry.
I was talking to Ken about this, and I don't know if you see this or not, Andy, but on the Rockin' Legend 7 tunes, you sound a lot like Gil Moore from the band Triumph.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you listen, he does some vocals, and Rick Emmett did most of them. But if you listen to his songs that he sings on and the Legend 7 stuff, I was like, that sounds like Triumph, man.
Uh,
Especially the newer stuff. And their last album where Gil did all the vocals on it, I'm like, man, this sounds a lot like that Triumph version. So it's
right.
awesome. That Legend 7 stuff is great, Andy.
Oh, well, thanks. It's speaking of two stories here. A funny story was this guy reached out to me one time. He found me on Facebook or something, and he was like, "Hey, man, I have the Legend album and I have the Legend 7 album, but I can't find 2, 3, 4, or 5, and 6." And I was like, that's because there are none. And I had to explain the story to him and all that. But talking about Triumph, we worked up. Remember that song "Fight the Good Fight"?
Yep.
We used to play that live some because it had a good message. We did that one too. We did that one, and we worked up "Free Ride" by who did "Free Ride"?
Hold on.
Edgar Winter Group.
Yep.
Is that who that was?
I'm trying to.
Or was that Foghat?
Oh, "Free Ride" was Foghat. What was the one that?
No, that's "Slow Ride." That's "Slow Ride." Hold on a second.
"Free Ride." Come on and take a free ride.
I can't remember. Shame on me.
We worked up that song. I think it was Edgar Winter Group. And then, lo and behold, we played it at some festival, and next thing we know, Audio Adrenaline had recorded it. So we stopped playing it,
Yeah. You brought up Legend 7, and that was a great story about what happened to the interim numbers there. But do you feel that the name change from your first album of Legend to then Legend 7 with Blind Faith, do you feel that the name change maybe confused some of your fans in some manner? Do you feel like that brought about any confusion?
Yeah, I think that time period, the name change probably confused people. That was about the time grunge hit and killed off so many of the arena rock type bands and stuff. So I think there's a combination of different things, and we just kind of got caught in the middle of that whole a lot of different things happening in music, and you wouldn't think Christian music would be affected by grunge as much as it was. It really was. I mean, a lot of those bands, you just didn't survive, And then we were trying to figure out, okay, so what do we do? I don't really want to put on a flannel shirt and try to be something I'm not. Although I'll tell you, I told you I'm kind of an eclectic music fan that, I could right now, if somebody offered me, hey, let's get together and let's make a yacht rock album, I'd do it. Cause I love those kind of songs too. You guys know the yacht rock stuff?
Yeah. I know what you're referring to, Andy. Yeah.
Yacht rock?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's Steely Dan's one of my all-time favorite bands.
Yeah. I love. I mean, as much as I love Journey and all that, I loved Christopher Cross.
Sure.
I loved his stuff. I thought he's the king of yacht rock. Him and Steely Dan probably are at the top of yacht rock. And then there's falls in line with the Michael McDonald, Kenny Loggins, all that stuff. But I don't know how did I get off on that?
Well, I think only because good tunes are good tunes.
Yeah.
And you said you didn't feel like putting on a flannel shirt when grunge hit. And let me ask you, on that juncture, then, and hopefully Rex will tell us who did Free Ride, but
It was Edgar Winter Group.
okay. I lose a point on my card credentials. +1 for Andy, -1 for me. Andy was because look, Legend/Legend 7, you guys were pro all the way. Great music, great sound. I mean, you guys were right up there with, we'll just say Petra, because Petra's kind of the kings of arena rock from back in the day in the Christian circles, but you guys were right up there. 2 wonderful albums. Was grunge kind of the thing with a lot of bands that kind of, because you guys just kind of disappeared on us, is where I'm going with this.
Right. Well, we ultimately ended up, the second album, I probably like, well, I don't know. I shouldn't say I like more things off of the second album than the first one, because they're probably even, but I think that sales, the second album didn't sell as well as the first one did. And I think that had to do with probably the name change and the grunge movement and all this stuff where, once people are done, they're kind of done with you, unless you reinvent yourself or something. And so that's the struggle that we were having, is do we continue on and try to change our sound, or what, where do we go from here? But I just ultimately, thought, well, I guess it's run its course. So I think I just need to cut ties and try to do something. Now, my bandmates weren't, Mike Jacobs left before I did. He said, I'm tired of doing all this. I just want to go out and play my guitar and sing some songs that I wrote. And so that's what he did. And then, so the 3 of us left. I ultimately ended up just saying, I just think I need to figure out something else to do with myself, music wise. And of course, Billy and Randy weren't real happy with me at the time, but we managed to mend fences, and me and Randy are still great friends. Mike and I are great friends. And
Andy, at this juncture, and talking about maintaining relationships with Mike and Randy, I don't wish for us to be remiss. If you don't mind, could you say a few words about your friend, the late great Billy Williams, drums for Ruscha and Legend 7, because we just like to take a moment and respectfully remember him here.
Oh, he and I we went way back. We went to the same high school, and he was a couple of years younger than me, but we got to know each other roaming around, being in different bands and things like that. And I kind of knew him from high school. But like I told you, he ultimately was the one that kind of got me moved to Nashville and do what I do, He was an interesting guy, though. I always thought he was one of the best drummers ever. And he wasn't fancy. He wasn't flashy. But, man, he was like, I called him the Boom King, because he was just, he was a good drummer. Like I said, he wasn't flashy or anything, but he was a great drummer. Meat and potatoes. And he even said that at times. He said, I know I'm a meat and potatoes drummer, but I'll give you all I got, And he did. He was just, I loved the way he played. Lots of other groups loved the way he played too. Matter of fact, the Allies offered him a gig. They wanted him to come play for them after their drummer had left. And so anyway, he had this wicked sense of humor too. He was really funny. Sometimes to the point where you're like, I think he just insulted me, and I think my feelings are hurt. But I mean, he would say things. He'd tell jokes all the time, and he'd say things like, "Why is it that if God intended for us to not eat the animals, why did He make them out of meat?" I mean, That's who Billy was. He really, he had a sharp, wicked sometimes sense of humor, but he was really quick witted and stuff. And I mean, we never knew that he was struggling with mental health issues and stuff like that. And even back when we were doing those words weren't even really around mental health issue. That came along later on and stuff like that. And, I mean, I remember his wife saying after he had passed away, he had told her, I just don't know. I just don't see how a God, the great God that we try to serve could love me. And I never knew he was going through stuff like that. And it still makes me, I wish we could go back and, say, hey man, here for you, but I don't know. He was a great guy, and we loved him dearly and still do. And I believe he's in heaven.
Sure.
I believe that God accepted him just like he accepted anybody else. But your head gets twisted around and you start believing things that you shouldn't believe. And
Well, Andy, some of the things we were talking about earlier, I mean, all of us are works in progress. We were talking about Russ Taff early in the conversation. Each one of us is a work in progress. And I am so grateful that the Lord, Jesus is our great high priest without sin, but who in all points was tempted as we are.
Right.
Knew all the struggles that each one of us, all the struggles, whether it was mental, physical, emotional, Jesus knows. And I'm so thankful for his gracious sacrifice. It was a gift that, when we receive it in our hearts, it's a gracious gift. I'm kind of just talking to myself, Andy, and
Right.
I get Billy. I understand, and we can't, there's nothing we can do, what is it? I'm convinced that neither height nor depth, nor angels nor demons, nor any other thing can separate us from the love of God through Jesus the Christ. And I give thanks for them.
Oh yeah, me too. I think it's the gift. That gift, it's so simple. The gift is so simple, but yet when you really, really start thinking about it, it's very complex. Thank God it's simple. That we don't have to go out and get naked and run around fire and do all these other crazy things to.
Yes. He did it all, didn't he? Yeah. Simple for our benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's nothing we can do, to be holy.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks be to God for his unspeakable gift.
Yes, absolutely.
Juliana Wilson was 17. Left to make a mark as a beauty queen. Till she finds a beauty that lies within. Juliana won't be coming home again. Juliana won't be coming home.
Andy, you mentioned earlier talking about the Allies wanting to accrue Billy for their band. In 1997, you and Randy Thomas of Allies / Sweet Comfort Band, you all gifted us with an album called Identical Strangers. Who could forget Juliana Wilson? Great tune off of that album. Tell us about how that came together with you and Randy.
Okay, so during the Legend days, we had toured with Allies, and we kind of got to know Bob and Randy and those guys. And then, Bob decided to go off and be a solo artist and this and that. So Randy was he was writing songs, and he had this barn that he had converted into a recording studio. And so when I when the whole Legend 7 thing, when that was over with, I thought about him and I was like, he's such a great songwriter and a real talent. And so I had a manager at the time, and I was like, let's reach out to him and see if he wants to if he'd just write some songs with me or something, you know? So we reached out to him and he was like, yeah. So we got together and started writing all these songs, and with another guy. Do you know a guy named, you remember a guy named Brian Wooten?
Oh, yes. From White Heart Follower. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Brian was a good friend too. And so the three of us got together and we started collaborating on a bunch of songs. Brian's a brilliant, he's a brilliant guitar player.
Is he still with Trace Atkins?
No, he retired.
Okay.
Yeah, he retired and he moved to Texas where his grandbabies were. So, you know, so he's probably still writing songs and stuff. Once in a while, he would call me to, hey, can you come over here and do a demo with me? And I'd do that sometimes. But anyway, the three of us got together and we started writing all these songs. And I was like, wow, these songs are, and that was the first time that I really got together with people that really, really understood how to craft and write a song and, you know, and do things with it. Because the kind of writing that I would do, you know, I'd have stuff in my head and a lyric, you know, and we'd write around, me and Mike would write around it or whatever, or he'd have a guitar thing. But that was the first time that I really realized these cats really know how to write songs, you know, especially Randy. I was like, gosh. And so we kept writing these songs. And then we were sitting in the studio one day and he says to me, you know what? I really, really like the stuff we're doing. What would you think we just like tried to do a duo and we just kind of, just see what happens. And I was like, I'm in. I'll do anything with you. You're yes, sir. So we started shopping stuff to labels and stuff. We didn't have much luck with the bigger labels like Word and stuff like that. I think prior to getting together with Randy, I'd put together some stuff and I'd gone to a particular label and I was probably, I don't know, early 30s. And they said to me, well, you've got a good look and we like your music and stuff, but you're just too old.
At 30.
At 30 something, you know, I was like, okay, what are you looking for? You know? And then my manager said, they're looking for 18-year-olds. So, okay. So when Randy and I were shopping our stuff, we didn't have much luck with some of the bigger labels, but we did, you know, so we signed with this smaller label, Damascus Road. It was what it was called. And they were very excited about us. And you know what? When those singles came out, especially Julian and Wilson, that's the highest charting song I've ever had, I think. Besides Carry Me with Legend went pretty high. But, you know, we released Julian Wilson, Extraordinary Love. What else did we release? There was 3 or 4 that we released. They did pretty well. But in that time period also, Randy had written a song with Bob, Butterfly Kisses.
Yeah.
And I laugh about it now, you know, but it did change the course of what we were doing because, he made a lot of money off that song. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, I still want to work with you and stuff, but I just don't want to go on the road anymore. And I don't, you know, I think what we should do is we should find you another partner and I'll still produce for you. We'll still write songs together and this and that. So I was okay with that. I was a little disappointed because you don't just replace a Randy Thomas. He was a real talent. A really, really talented guy. Mm-hmm. But then the record company got irritated at him because they wanted publishing from that song, and I agreed with him on this. It was like, what did you do for him on that song? You didn't do anything.
Right.
So then they kind of cut him out of anything to do with me, and they sat me down and said, I said, well, what if I find another partner and Randy can still produce the record? And they said, no, we don't want Randy involved in it anymore. And I was like, well, okay, we want to do just a solo record with you. And so that's how and looking back on it, and I've told guys that I've been in bands with, I was like, I'm really not a solo guy. I don't like that, being a solo artist.
Sure.
It's not, it wasn't very fun. Cause then I was like, made that record and I was going out, with tracks and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I hated it.
In 99, Midnight of Hope was released, and it's more CCM in nature than anything else you had done, meaning more middle of the road pop. And I know you said you have a broad palette, but was this with the scope of the songs, was that a natural progression for you, or was that something that maybe you were that the record company was maybe saying, hey, Andy, let's go this direction?
Well, I think it was a combination of the record company, and there was these two guys that produced the record, and one of them was a songwriter too. Mm. And he ended up with a bunch of songs on that album. Mm. And, when I listen back to that album, there's songs that I go, I like that. I like that. I think that represents me pretty well. That one's okay though. But there's songs on there and I go, it doesn't represent me like I hoped it would. And it's nothing against the guys that produced the record, because they're both great guys. One of them, I think, probably wanted to get his songs on an album. So I didn't really have any, I felt like I got to a point where I didn't have any say in anything anymore, and I felt like when the record came out, it was, I was a little disappointed, honestly. And it's not that I told you guys earlier, I could make a yacht rock record and be really happy.
Sure. But
it needs to be the right songs, and it needs to be the right feel vocally for me. One thing that, going back to the Identical Stranger stuff and talking about Randy, he taught me some things that were very, very, very good. I loved, like for instance, when he would be because he produced that record, he would be producing vocals, and I'd do something, and because you're coming from this time period where if you're not singing in the rafters the whole time, you got to impress people by singing in the rafters all the time. Well, he would say to me, you realize you have a really good voice, even down in the lower register of your voice. He said, we need to explore that some. And I was like, okay. And so he said, what we want to do with these songs, I'm singing. I can do this, but then I come back down and I'm singing. Oh, I can do this, And so I just learned a lot and I don't know if that came from him working with Brian Duncan and Bob Carlisle, because they obviously great singers.
Well, Andy, you're one of the greats. You truly are, and I mean that. Upper echelon. Put you in the same category, honestly, with quality as John Elefante. John's
Wow.
John's terrific. You truly are one of the greats, and thank you for blessing us with your gift. And I was doing the math, and it's been 26 years since your solo album. Are you doing any music at all today?
Well, actually, that's funny you say that. I actually this afternoon I am going to go to some friend's house, and we get together and we have this garage band, and we play old stuff that we all liked, all like Journey stuff and all that, and we have a blast. Now, one of these days, we're hoping to get the band out of the garage and go play some places. But for now, we're just kind of getting together and just having some fun.
What's the name of the band, Andy? Can I ask that?
Well, it doesn't really have a name yet. We're still in search of it. We were going to go with, how iPhone pops up Scam Likely? We were gonna go with that, but then we realized there's about 1 million Scam Likelies out there. So we're still all the good names are taken.
Well, how about Andy's band?
Well, then it puts too much on me. I don't want to be even though the guys in the band, they all go, you can say it's not about the singer, but it is. We're not a instrumental band,
Yep.
and the people identify with the singer. They identify with the voice. And I think that's probably true to some degree, but
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
there's bands that have those guys that.
Well, you got the Perry and the the Page and the Plant. You have the Joe Perry and the Steven Tylers, and sometimes it's a combination between that lead guitarist, and
yeah, exactly.
Are y'all doing any recordings with your band, Andy?
Yeah, we've recorded, I don't know, 4 or 5 songs, just in hopes that at some point maybe we can send them out to somebody and maybe play some gigs somewhere.
All cover tunes or any originals?
No, it's all cover tunes right now.
Gotcha.
We might venture out and try to write a song here or there, but it's just one of those things where I laid out of it for a long time.
Right.
I was so, I wouldn't say tired. I was tired of trying to find something because I just felt like I was starting over all the time.
Yep.
I go to Ruscha. Well, that's Legend 7. Oh, that's the end of the rope for that. Identical Stranger. Oh, there's the end of that. And then the solo thing was, somewhat disappointing to the point where I was like, man, I'm tired of starting over. And plus, my wife deserves to have a better life. And I had 3 kids at the time, and so I learned how to cut hair. I went to school for a year, learned how to cut hair. It was a hard transition because I was like, even though this is creative, it's not the creative, place I really wanted to be. But you have to do what you have to do, and things with God are seasonal. You have seasons of stuff, and I feel like it kind of ran its course. I'm not saying that God was done with me or anything. I probably could have, kept doing it, but I got busy. Not only my son started playing competitive sports, and he had to have somebody taking him around. So that I got busy with that. I got busy. I actually became a pretty good. My mom, when I went into that field, she said, "Well, what do I call you? Do I call you a beautician?" And I was like, "Mom, call me anything but a beautician."
No minds, ignoring their own lies, whoa. Justify the means when the hero dies.
didn't sing much for a long, long time. And then I'd kind of get back into it a little bit. And then when these guys call me, they're like, hey, what do you think about putting a, garage band together and let's just see what happens and see if we can go out and play or something. And I was like, okay. And it's been fun. It's been a blast. And at some point I probably, I kick myself sometimes because I go, God gives you a gift and then you bury it because you're kind of, I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little bit bitter when it all came to an end. I was just like, I'm kind of mad about the whole thing,
Sure.
And then I had to get over it because I was like, you know what? It's seasonal and God has something else for you to do.
I think it's awesome, Andy, just listening to your story, your journey. And I certainly understand from my own journey. And I know Rex, a lot, well, maybe all of us as Christ followers, we've had seasons of bitterness due to some things because, we're in this world, but we're not of it. And we're peculiar people. And this world, things can seem foreign to us here, as they should. But I think it's wonderful in getting to hear your story of how you were able to, with your son in competitive sports, to be able to be that dad that was active with that and be able to do that with for your family and stuff. And I'll say this too, as an outsider looking in, in 97 is whenever Identical Strangers, that album was released. And that was the time period, because I'm thinking about bands such as Petra and some others that, Petra, their slogan was Petra means rock. Well, music is so fickle, the business, the industry, as we all know.
Right.
And during that time is whenever all of not only did grunge hit back in the early 90s, but around the mid to latter period 90s is when all of the praise and worship stuff, the modern worship is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And suddenly all the Christian rock bands that Rex and I grew up listening to, a good portion of them, I should say, suddenly everybody's doing modern worship. Now, worship for the Almighty, as we know, it's wonderful and he deserves to be worshiped, but you can also see the industry worship. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
It's a slippery slope and a fickle business. And I'm sorry that so many of y'all had to endure that stuff.
Well, I kind of miss the days of I guess you call them the story songs and all that kind of stuff. I kind of miss those days. Like there's albums that I still, Christian records that I listen to that I still go, and that is a great record. Like all three Russ Taff records that he did solo, those are fantastic records. And I'm saying records, so I'm dating myself now, but
and especially that last one, the just eponymous one, it just says Russ Taff. That is a great album, Andy.
It's
yes,
fantastic. I mean, I still believe all that stuff on there. He was the first Christian artist that I discovered when I became Christian. So, and I just always thought he was fantastic, and I thought he was good with the Imperials and all that. Although there were songs on the Imperials albums that I didn't care for as much, but then when he went solo, I loved his stuff. I loved him. Obviously I loved Petra. I thought they were, the Greg X Voles days, even into the John Schlitt days. Bob Hartman's a good songwriter, I always loved Allies. I loved their stuff. Bob Carlisle, fantastic singer. But I the thing about in looking back at Legend 7 particularly, we always got lumped in with metal bands, and it's nothing against metal, but I never thought we were a metal band.
Right.
I know. I always thought we were just a rock band.
Arena rock.
Yeah, arena rock band, and but we get lumped in, and then people say they're not metal. We never claimed to be metal. We keep getting lumped into this metal category, and
Well, at the time, Andy, anything, and I'm, you're talking about Russ Taff when we were talking about Russ, and I love Russ too. But you remember Watergrave by the Imperials?
oh, are you kidding? That's the one. That's the one that got me.
And it's got that one lead guitar lick in there where it kicks it. I can't begin to mimic it, but that song right there, and anything so even in the 80s with what I'm trying to say here is anything that had a little oomph to it in the Christian music circles, that was like considered hard rock or metal or something, So anyway, you guys, Legend 7 Legend, you guys were great arena rock, and absolutely adored you guys.
Hey, I got another funny story for you.
Yeah.
I don't know what made me think of this. This is with a story about Randy Ray.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to him joining us, when we all lived in Texas. He lived in Texas too. He had a little band and he was telling us a story about playing with this little band. They showed up at some little Catholic church event, and they set up, and they're playing these going to play these rock songs, and he said nothing but nuns showed up at this at this event. And so I said, well, what did you do? He said, well, we just stood at the microphone and said, you nuns ready to rock?
Oh, goodness gracious. That's awesome. None of the above. No.
Yeah, exactly.
That is awesome, man. Oh, goodness gracious.
And you will take refuge. Never let me be put to shame. Yeah, you will take refuge. Save me for the sake of your name. Yeah.
Andy, we're nearing our golden hour here, and thank you so much. You're so awesome and such a great vocalist. If you could make a brief statement to leave a lasting impression with your friends and fans, what would you wish to tell them?
I'm very humbled and thankful that somebody paid attention to something that I tried to do, and I hope that it still speaks to you in the same way that it spoke to you, or maybe it speaks to you differently than it spoke to you 26 years ago or 30 something years ago. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I had to do what I got to do, because though I had hoped it would be a longer career and all that kind of stuff, I'm very grateful for the time that I got to do it. And I made great friends, Jim and Amy Walter, the guys from White Cross, the guys from Petra, the guys from White Hart, Randy Thomas, Bob Carlisle, all those people, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a friend of Brian Duncan's, but got to sing a Christmas song with him and Bonnie Keene, which still to this day I listen to that and I go, that's a really good Christmas song. I like that. Anyway, I got off on something else, but thank you all, and I'm grateful and appreciate you. I appreciate you two guys reaching out to me. Like I told you earlier, I'd done a podcast with Joel Walker, and once in a while somebody just reaches out to me, and it's nice and it's fun. And also better give a shout out to my daughters. I do have two daughters that are older than my son, and they're great. My wife is great. My son's awesome, and so and I have one grandson, and he's awesome, and so. life is good. I'm in a good place. So
Very cool. Very cool. Andy, one of the things that I loved about Legend 7 in particular, Legend 7 is you guys played powerful music with the greatest message, all powerful message. And, God's word doesn't return void to him. And with that said, we always like to close out the end of every episode by, honoring the Lord and his word, keeping the main thing. And Rex and I call it the message from home. And so we typically pick something from an artist's album or a lyric or song, something of that nature coinciding with the band, which reminds us of a verse of scripture. And so from your song Refuge, from Blind Faith, the Blind Faith album, it says the chorus to that song, "In you I've taken refuge, never let me be put to shame. In you I've taken refuge, save me for the sake of your name." And Andy, that reminded me of Psalm 31, 1-3, which says, "In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me. Come quickly to my rescue. Be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. Since you are my rock and my fortress, for the sake of your name, lead and guide me." And so I was brought to that verse of scripture through the song Refuge by Legend 7. So, Andy,
Awesome.
Thank you so much for blessing us.
Oh, thank you. This has been great.
Yes, sir. I hope we didn't blow it too bad here.
Well, me either. I hope I didn't sound like a fool.
Oh no, you were great, Andy.
Well, guys, Andy, hang around for one more minute. We will sign off and say goodbye to our viewers. And thanks again, Andy. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Take care.
Where is justice? Where is peace? Is there one dream left on these raging streets? Where is understanding, or at least some sanity? Where is hope for the future on these raging streets?
Friends, regarding our very special guest today, he's a veteran of Christian rock, possessing one of the most dynamic Let me start this over. I've already messed up.
He wrote, he put it, he was able to, sorry, my dog is walking around here.
If somebody wants to go into where you're at, where is your place of business at that somebody like me can go get a nice haircut?